how to prevent weeds on your lawn, flower garden, and vegetable garden. Hey guys, I'm Steve from Trim That Weed, and today we're going to be exploring ways to prevent weeds from growing on your lawn or flower gardens. Watch until the end of the video for important mulching and mowing tips. Do you desire that lush, green lawn that you see on the cover of most home design magazines? Well, it is possible to get there, but you have to know how to take care of those pesky weeds. It's quite tempting to call any plant that grows on your garden or lawn a weed. Some weeds are problematic and will start competing with your plants for nutrients, while others are not very responsive to herbicides. Knowing the difference will impact greatly how you deal with them. Know your weeds. Before we get started, it's equally important that you know thy enemy. What I mean is, there's various common weeds that affect lawns and flower gardens, and it's important you know what they look like. Broadleaf weeds include those weeds that have leaves. This includes stuff like clovers, dandelions, or creeping Charlie, ground ivy. Perennial grassy weeds will mostly be dormant in winter, then re-emerge in spring. Once they emerge, they will spread through their seeds and roots. There's also annual weeds like crabgrass that reseed at the end of the season, only for them to spring up as new plants. How you kill the weeds will be determined by the type, which we have identified above. For the broadleaf weeds, you can use a small trigger-controlled pump-up pressure sprayer with the right herbicide. For clumps of weeds, you may need a tank sprayer. For wide areas and where the weeds are out of control, you may need a dial sprayer. The problem with some of these broadleaf killers is they also kill any leaves around them, including your flower bed. Perennial grassy weeds can be killed one weed at a time. You may need to wear rubber gloves, then coat the weeds with an herbicide solution. This will be tiring, so come prepared. For control of crabgrass, you will need to put in place certain preventative measures. This includes applying some crabgrass pre-emergence preventer in between spring mowing. Most of the preventers in the market appear as granules, which you can put into your lawn through a spreader. Once the crabgrass emerges again, you can either treat the clumps with some solution of pre-emergence crabgrass killer, let the weeds grow until the following spring, then use the preventer, or hand pull the crabs to ensure they do not reseed themselves. Mulching. If you're not practicing mulching, then you're missing out on an effective and natural way to control weeds in your garden. One of the key advantages from mulching include denying the weed seeds of sunlight, hence preventing their growth. The mulch will, with time, decompose, and this provides your lawn with the necessary nutrients. It is important to replenish your mulch occasionally until it's around 2 inches thick. This is because the mulch you previously used could be inhabiting some weed seeds, which may germinate later. When mulching, cover the soil in between your plants and also keep it a few inches from your plants. This helps prevent insect infestation. Some common organic mulching materials that farmers use include shredded leaves, wheat straw, and wood chips. You also have inorganic mulching materials like black plastic. If you have persistent weeds, then you can cover the area with dampened newspaper first, with black ink only, then put mulch over it until it is 2 inches thick. Pulling weeds out. At times, the best thing to solve the weed problem on your lawn is to simply pull them out the old-fashioned way. Weeds often slide out well when the ground is wet, so you may want to do this after rainfall or watering. The trick is to pull them from the roots so that they do not have a chance of regrowing. From doing your weeding, you may also want to wear some waterproof gloves to protect your hands. Some weeds are more stubborn, and you may need to weed them out using a fork. During dry conditions, the weeds that you pull out often dry up and shrivel. But in wet conditions, you will need to collect the weeds and put them into a compost bin where you burn them when they're dry. Avoid soil disruption. Many of you have probably heard that to contain weeds, you need to stir up the top 1 or 2 inches of the soil, as this damages the weeds. However, this may not work if the weed roots run deep into the soil. In fact, soil disruption can be counterproductive, as it only brings dormant seeds to the surface, where when exposed to light and air, come back to life and grow. There's another analogy that soil disruption should be done at night, as during the day the weeds are exposed to a lot of light. While this method is still debatable, you may want to try it out. Chop off their heads. If uprooting weeds can seem like a hassle, you may want to chop off their heads. This prevents them from releasing more seeds into the ground. You can do this at least once a week. This works well with deadheading weeds as it gives you some time before the seeds prop up again. Besides reseeding, chopping off weed heads forces the weeds to exhaust their supply of root buds, and this has a positive effect on limiting their growth. For this, you can opt to go with pruning loppers or string trimmers. Trim garden edges. As you can see from what we have discussed, having a well-maintained lawn is a lot of work. When you take a close observation of your garden, you'll notice that weeds tend to accumulate along the edges of your yard. Lawnmowers are not effective for trimming the garden edges, and this forces you to use trimmers. Reduce open garden space. Another way to keep weeds from your lawn is to plant your plants as close to each other as possible. This also means you need soil that drains well. To start off your garden, you can begin with warm weather plants. Then, at the end of the season, you can do some cover plants like winter wheat, ryegrass, or oats. When done well, this will prevent the emergence of weeds on your garden. Using drip irrigation. This helps if you have specific types of plants that grow well with drip irrigation. Since the water is available only to the crops you want to grow, it starves the weeds of water, hence preventing their growth. It's estimated that depriving weeds of water reduces their germination by up to 50 to 70%. However, some perennial weeds like bindweed tend to have roots that run deep and can find their way to moist areas. Let sleeping weeds lie. Weeds are ever present in soil, and the best strategy to keep them at bay is to let the sleeping ones lie. Only those weeds that lie on the top 1 inch of your soil find enough sunlight to stimulate growth. The rest just lie dormant until you disrupt them. If you choose to dig them up, you awaken them by exposing them to the right amount of sunlight and nutrients. Leave undisturbed grounds as they are. Before you start gardening, you may want to allow the weeds to grow by putting a plastic sheet over your garden. This can be done in early spring. Once the weeds start germinating, pull them out and then plant your own crops. Weeds will constantly re-emerge in your lawn or flower garden, so you need to be on the lookout for them at all times. With certain preventative measures like mulching, watering properly, and using the right herbicides, you should keep them in check. What has been your experience with weed elimination? Do you do it in the manual way by pulling them out, or do you prefer to use the herbicides? Tell us your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like these. See you on the next one.